As you've heard me say before, Kamari and I were both professional horsemen by the age of 12. I was breaking horses for people, and Kamari was teaching riding to students around her. Well, not long before we were married, though a couple of 3 years, there was a young lady came to work with Kamari, and her name was Carla. And Carla, as a little bitty girl, had wanted a horse. And her parents were both professors at Oklahoma State University. And they told her, well, we can't afford to buy you a horse, so you'll have to save your money to buy a horse. And so Carla took an old cigar box and covered it or painted it and wrote on it Carla's Horse Fund. And her folks, being professors at Oklahoma State University, had different people to their house for dinners and visiting type thing. Well, whenever they had guests, Carla would walk around with her box, her horse box, and say, would you like to contribute to Carla's Horse Fund? Well, it wasn't very long before Carla had $200 in her little box. And she had a neighbor not far away that had some horses, and Carla went down there, and this neighbor had a little yellow pony that was young, 2-year-old, and had not been broken. Anyway, Carla bought it for $200 from her neighbor. And of course, they didn't have any pins or anything. The neighbor gave her a halter, and she came home leading this horse, tied it to their clothesline out in the backyard. And of course, her parents had no idea what to do with this, but they knew about Kamari, and so they called Kamari and told her their dilemma. Says, we have a horse crazy daughter, and she has bought a horse, and we don't know what to do. Can you help us? And so Kamari went over and took the horse and Carla and took her home. Well, Kamari worked on getting the horse to where you could ride it a little bit, and Carla was scared to death. When Kamari first got her on the horse, Kamari had to lead her everywhere, and pretty soon got over that scary thing. I talked about in the last section about learning to trust. Horses have to trust people, and people have to trust horses. Well, Kamari finally got the little horse to where Carla would trust it enough to ride it all by herself. Well, to give her confidence, Kamari laid poles on the ground, just a 4-inch pole, and had Carla walk Tammy, was what she named the horse, walk Tammy over these poles on the ground. And so that took a while to get to where they would trust each other to go over the pole on the ground. In a little bit, she was able to trot over those poles on the ground. And then they began to canter over those poles on the ground. And when they could canter over the poles on the ground, Kamari started raising one end of the pole, make little crossbars out of them. And Carla would take Tammy and go over these little bars. Well, it took a couple of years. I don't know how long it actually took, because this was before I came in the picture. But Carla was showing and showing over jumps. And little Tammy, of course, had been brought along very slowly, very carefully. Carla had come along slowly and carefully. And they were a pretty competitive pair. Well, they would go to the little local horse shows there in north central Oklahoma. And Carla would enter in every class she could get in. And so she might ride little Tammy in 10 or 12 classes in a day. She rode her in equitation, and she rode her in pleasure classes, and she rode her in jumper classes, and she rode her in hunter classes. And they got to where they were winning very consistently. And she was, then Kamari and I got married, and I came along and was helping with this process. Anyway, after I'd been there for a year or so, we had established some rules for all of our students. And we brought the students together and had them help us establish the rules. Because if you make rules just you yourself, it's hard to maintain what the performance of everybody. Now you can suggest rules, and then you can establish some rules, but they need to be involved. Students need to be involved, particularly in what the consequences would be of breaking a rule. One of the rules that we had established that no one was to go jump on the hunt field without instruction, without either myself or Camary or someone we had designated to go with them to school their horses over the hunt field. Well, it had come a rain one night, and I'd gone to town, and when I came back mid-morning or so, here's a set of hoof prints going out on the hunt field. And it was obvious that they had jumped all the jumps on the hunt field. Now, one of the reasons for us having someone there was a safety factor. Because we had rock walls, and we had big banks, and we had timber that was 2 feet in diameter that we were jumping over, and if you make a mistake, there's the potential of getting seriously hurt. Anyway, I got to the barn, and we brought all the students in together, and I said, somebody broke our top rule. I said, somebody was jumping a horse, and I knew who it was because I could read in the tracks that it was Tammy's tracks. Anyway, I said, somebody broke the rules. Who would do that? Who did that? And Carla sheepishly said, it was me. I did it. And I said, okay, Carla, what should be the punishment for you breaking the strongest rule that we have at the stable? And now we were getting down toward the end of the show season, and Carla says, well, shouldn't get to go show. And I said, okay, you've got it. Well, she was leading the state of Oklahoma in junior jumper. She was leading the state in junior hunter. She was leading the state in equitation. And we had 3 more shows to go. But there were some other riders that were up close to her. And she was of the opinion that she shouldn't show, and which would include all 3 shows. And her folks just came unglued because part of their status symbol was her success in the arena, as often parents are, and that's fine, Anyway, I told her, I said, Carla, you can go to the shows with us, but you'll be a groom for the other students. And so we went to 2 of those shows, and we had 1 more show left. Well, in those 2 shows, she was passed by riders for the championship in both the hunter and the jumper and the equitation. And when you go to a jumper show or a hunter and jumper show, typically you have a division, and for hunter, you may have 3 or 4 classes in a day's showing, and you'll have 3 or 4 jumper classes in a day's showing, and you'll have 1 equitation class and under saddle, classes. And so we got ready to go to the last show, and I said, Carla, I'm going to relent. You've been so good that we're going to let you show in this last show. I said, which championship do you want to win? I said, Tammy will get too tired if we try to win all of it. I said, so you pick which one you want to win. And I said, we'll see if we can't make that happen at this show. And she chose to wanted to win the junior jumper classes, the junior jumper championship. So I schooled her for the week in front of that to get her really ready for those 4 junior jumper classes that we're going to have. 3 classes and then a stakes class at the end, the championship class. And And so we went there and we were able to win all 4 of those classes. And she wound up being the junior jumper champion for the state of Oklahoma that year. And so she was rewarded for her experience and her expertise and what she had done. She had paid the dues to get there, but she also paid the dues for having broken the rules. You know, I view training children like a funnel. You have the neck of the funnel, and when a baby is down in that neck of the funnel, and the edge of the funnel represents the word no, they have no option. You get to decide everything a baby does or whatnot. But as they get into the part of the funnel that is sloping out, that's responsibility. And so you give them more latitude in there before you say no. And as the funnel goes wider and wider, as the child gets older and older, you give them more freedom, but it gives it with some guidance. And for instance, when they get to be teenagers, if you've got a 10 o'clock curfew, that they're supposed to be home every night at 10 o'clock, and there's a party comes up that the youth want to stay out until 11, you can say, okay, I'll let you stay until 11. And if you come in at 11, we'll see what happens. And let's say that they stay too late. They stay till 11:30. Then their curfew goes back to 10 o'clock. That wall that represents no comes in. But if they get in by 11, then you can say, okay, I'm going to widen the wall. You can now stay out till 11 on anything that you are doing without us getting special permission from us. And that's a good way to train kids, horses, and everything else. And so think of a funnel and how you can use the word no both to train youth and to train a horse. A horse is the reverse of that. You start with a really wide place. In other words, you accept almost everything a horse does and you punish for very little. And you gradually get them more and more disciplined until you get them finally totally disciplined. A dressage horse at the Grand Prix level has to be totally disciplined. Not so much in some of the other sports, but the funnel works really well. You'll have a wonderful day.